Hey, what is going on, guys? In this video today, we're going to be going over how to find your perfect sensitivity in Fortnite. This video will be for controller players specifically because mouse sensitivity is a whole different animal and I honestly don't know all that much about it. Finding the sensitivity values that you're most comfortable with is incredibly important for a variety of different reasons. Fortnite's a game that features a ton of different potential fights. Just to name a few, you have close-range shotgun fights, close-range SMG fights, medium-range AR fights, long-range sniper fights, and so many more. For every single one of those fights, your sensitivity is going to play a major factor in being as accurate as possible. And what makes sensitivity such a popular topic in the Fortnite community is the fact that not everyone is going to prefer or even be comfortable with the same sensitivities. It's actually a good idea to reference or even straight up copy the sensitivities of a really good player as kind of a starting point, but once you do that, you should be looking to make tweaks to those values that make it as perfect as possible for you. And the purpose of this video is to show you guys exactly how you should be doing that. So without further ado, let's get right into it. Alright, so the first thing you need to understand about sensitivity for controller Fortnite is that it basically works like a chain reaction. The majority of the different sensitivity options in the game aren't actually independent values, they're actually a multiplier of another sensitivity. Let's just use scope sensitivity here as an example. Whatever value you put for your scope sensitivity is simply a multiplier of your X and Y sensitivity. So if that value is 0.4, for example, that doesn't really mean your scope sensitivity is 0.4 or 4 out of 10. It's actually whatever your X and Y sensitivity is multiplied by 0.4. That's actually really important because it means that if you find a scope sensitivity you really like, but then you change either your X or Y sensitivity, your scope sensitivity will be changed as well. So logically, it makes the most sense to start at the top of the sensitivity pyramid, which in Fortnite is definitely your X and Y sensitivity. It's so incredibly important to find an X and Y sensitivity that you really like, because almost every other important sensitivity in the game is a multiplier of it. Your goal should be to find an X and Y sensitivity that you pretty much never change. I've changed my building, ADS, and scope sensitivity a ton over just the past few months, but my X and Y sensitivity, on the other hand, has barely changed at all over the past year. If you can get your X and Y sensitivity right, everything else will basically fall into place with it. So that begs the question, how should you go about finding your perfect X and Y sensitivity? I think the quickest and easiest way to do this is to utilize one of the new Kovacs-based creative maps for controller players. They utilize random moving targets that give off aim assist and constantly spawn and respawn as you kill them. I'll throw a code on the screen right now from a YouTuber named Tito who made a course with a perfect section for experimenting with sensitivities. What you want to do once you load up the course is grab a silent scar and then make your way to the section of the course you see on the screen right now. Once you've done that, you want to pick an initial X and Y sensitivity to try out. It doesn't really matter what you pick initially, but I would recommend a value between 5 and 8, since that's the range of what the majority of good players play on. Then you want to start shooting one shot at a time at the targets while not aiming down sights exactly like I'm doing in the clip. I wouldn't necessarily say you want to be flick-shotting the targets, but more like snapping onto them. Now obviously, the vast majority of the time you're using an AR in a real game, you're going to be aiming down sights with it. But this exercise is less for actual practice and more for trying to find the sensitivities that you feel most comfortable with. Hitting these targets super consistently is a relatively difficult thing to do, so it'll serve as a great test for your aim with each sensitivity you try. And if you're able to consistently hit the targets in this situation, close-range shotgun shots should feel pretty easy in comparison. As you're doing that, you'll start to get a sense for how in control you feel with the X and Y sensitivity you're trying, and also you want to pay attention to how many targets you're actually hitting. Plus, here's a general rule of thumb that will serve as a good indicator of if your sensitivity is too high. When your X and Y sensitivity is too high, you're going to find yourself constantly aiming past targets. What I mean by this is that if you're moving your crosshair from left to right to aim at a target, you'll find yourself always ending up too far to the right when you go to shoot. That would obviously be flipped if you're moving from right to left, you'll end up going too far to the left, and same deal for moving up and down as well. To give you guys a visual example of what this looks like, pay attention to the clip on the screen right now. For this example, I put my sensitivity at a value way too high for me. I think I went with like 9x, 9y. And as you can see, it just looks so out of control. I'm constantly flicking past targets, and you can probably tell right away I simply can't handle this sensitivity. To contrast with that, let me show you guys a clip of me using a value much closer to my normal sensitivity. As you can see, even though it's a decent amount slower than 9.9, the crosshair placement and movement just looks so much smoother as a whole. Now, it's relatively easy to tell if your sensitivity is too high, but determining if it's too low really just comes down to preference. If you just solely pay attention to how many targets you hit, you may think that a sensitivity like 4.4 or 5.5 is the best possible option. But like I mentioned earlier, you want to be at a sensitivity that's high enough to flick or snap onto targets while doing this exercise. With any sensitivity under 5 or so, it'll feel more like you're dragging your crosshair than actually flicking it. That's why I really wouldn't recommend choosing anything lower than that. It's simply going to be too slow for you to track moving enemies in-game. So now that you guys understand the indicators of your sensitivity being too high or too low, it really just comes down to you making tweaks to whatever initial value you choose. If you started on 7 and feel that it's too high, maybe go down to 6.75 or 6.5 and then try that. If you started on 6 and you feel like you can go higher while still being super accurate, switch to something a little higher and continue shooting the targets. Anytime you switch, you want to make sure you do it gradually. You don't want to go from 5 to 7 right away, because then it's obviously going to feel terrible and really hard to control. And you also want to make sure you give each new sensitivity a fair shot. Don't just shoot one clip with it and give up because it feels bad at first. It'll probably take 2 or 3 minutes to get used to, so at the very least give it that much time. So once you've done the necessary tweaking and experimentation, you've hopefully found the perfect X and Y sensitivity for yourself. Again, it's important that you're sure about that because changing it down the road will also change pretty much every other sensitivity you have. The next sensitivity you want to focus on is your ADS sensitivity. Luckily, you can pretty much repeat the same process for this as you did for finding your X and Y sensitivity. Except this time, you obviously want to be aiming down sights the entire time compared to never aiming down sights like you were before. I mentioned earlier that the range of X and Y sensitivity that the majority of good players use is between 5 and 8. Well, there's also a range for ADS sensitivity, which I found based on other top controller players is between 2.25 and 3.5. So for example, if you chose 7x and 7y sensitivity, a good starting point for your ADS sensitivity would be something like 0.4 or 0.45. Because when multiplied with 7.7, that means your ADS sensitivity is either 2.8 or 3.15, which both fall pretty close to the middle for that ADS sensitivity range. You can do the exact same thing for scope sensitivity as well by using a scoped AR. Just as a disclaimer, if you're someone that doesn't really snipe or use scoped weapons in general, this probably isn't even worth your time. I barely ever snipe in games, so I've always just used a scope sensitivity that's slightly lower than my ADS sensitivity, so that's a solid option for the lazy non-snipers out there. For building an editing sensitivity, I really think it's as simple as, over time, working towards as high of a sensitivity multiplier as possible. Like I've mentioned tons of times before, when building sensitivity was added to the game back in October, I started off at like a 1.2 multiplier. Now I'm all the way at the max of 2.0. This definitely isn't as easy as console due to the lower FPS, but you really want to try to be constantly bumping it up by 0.05 or 0.1 every few days. Also, you may want to keep your editing sensitivity multiplier a bit lower than your building sensitivity multiplier, because editing requires a decent amount more precision than building. And even though it isn't technically a sensitivity, here are my very basic thoughts on changing your dead zone setting. If you're going to do it, you really only want to ever move it down because it gives you a tad more control. However, since it's already defaultly set at between 0.12 and 0.25 depending on your controller, I wouldn't recommend going too far lower than that initial value. I've noticed that the majority of the top controller players are usually between 0.1 and 0.2, so anywhere in that range should be fine. So, I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and if you watched the entire thing, be sure to let me know with a comment down in the comment section below. This video is about sensitivity, so I want to know, what is your personal X, Y, ADS, and building sensitivity in Fortnite? Be sure to leave a like, leave a comment, subscribe, turn on post notifications, do whatever the heck you want, and I will catch you guys next time.